Sascha Vykos, born Myca Vykos, is the signature character of the Tzimisce clan in Vampire the Masquerade and Dark Ages Vampire. This androgynous character, a Nodus scholar, Tzimisce scientist, and Cainite monster, has long been the staunch supporter of Sabbat freedom and acts as the chief torturer. A musician with a scalpel, Sasha understands the nuance of every physical sensation and the nerves best suited to receive its ministrations. They are also a creature of learning, with a collection of books and artifacts to humble the halls of all academia. Sasha's enemies, including the Gangrel Beckett and the Malkavian Anatole, believe they hold cult status within the Sabbat, wherein sect members emulate their actions. In truth, however, Sasha is a monster beyond their own years. Few could ever understand the grand schemes of the Sabbat's Ronin Priscus. Greetings, kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to our World of Darkness and another episode of Metaplot Monday and another World of Darkness character bio. Specifically tonight, we are doing the legendary, the monstrous, the horrific Sascha Vykos. Vykos is the Tzimisce that everybody goes to when they think about Clan Tzimisce. The strangest thing, in my opinion, now, is that Sascha Vykos is so much not the perfect Tzimisce at all. I actually do not care for this character one bit. I used to love this character, and then I read more, and then I saw more, and I realized that Sasha has so many problems mentally that having them as a representative of the clan, it's pretty on the outside. It's terrifying on the inside. That's all I really have to say. Their history speaks for itself. Sascha Vykos, named Myca Vykos in the years before their self-inflicted castration, lived an enviable existence in the glorious Byzantine Empire. Born to royalty in the Carpathians before the turn of the first millennium, Myca seemed destined for greatness from a young age. As a child, their fits and visions brought them to the attention of the House Tremere within the Order of Hermes. They learned the basics of spellcraft and proved such an adept student that they inspired jealousy in the Magus Goratrix. Goratrix's later attempt to betray Myca to Tzimisce Cainites backfired, and the young boy found himself among the fiends. Myca was embraced by the draconian Tzimisce Symeon, whose line was enemies with the Carpathian Tzimisce. Eventually, both returned to Constantinople. The great books of Alexandria became Myca's silent teachers, while the political juggernauts within the Byzantine courts taught them the subtleties of influence. Myca became a member of the Dream Circle to expand their thaumaturgical knowledge and worked closely with the Keeper of the Faith, but still maintained correspondence with other Tzimisce from the Carpathian line, like Lujo and Valia, and worked with the children of Judas for their own ambitions. Like the other Cainites of the city, however, Myca became enamored with the Toreador Michael and the Methuselah's delusions of divinity. While loyal to their sire, they were greatly dismissive of their grandsire for having taken their sire's love from them and for installing numerous restrictive rules for the use of vicissitude in the service of the divinity within. Myca fanned the discontent within their sire's heart against their brother, hoping to drive a wedge between them that would drive Symeon away from the city. In secret, Myca planned to prepare to leave the city behind. So this is where we actually get an interesting start. Myca was meant to be a member of House Tremere, so they sensed a budding avatar within the young mystical child. He was supposed to be a mage, possibly part of the inner council of the Tremere themselves when they crossed over into being kindred. The idea that Myca Vykos could actually be one of the 7 founders of Clan Tremere is actually a very interesting what-if scenario when you think about it. Gortrix and them started a horrible rivalry before the embrace even occurred. And being brought into the draconic Tzimisce, in other words, the children of the Dracon, which is famously run by the Obertus Revenant clan. There's just so much. I do feel like a lot of these NPCs that they came up with, just there's so much. But that's also how you gain celebrity status in Vampire the Masquerade. So I guess I could probably let their illustrious lineage that involves the children of the Dracon, Order of Hermes, Tremere himself, Gortrix himself, the Methuselah Michael, most likely Dracon, and Antonius. Like, there's just so much fame wrapped around this character already, and we haven't even gotten really into, like, their existence as a kindred yet. Alas, neither Constantinople nor Michael lasted. When the Fourth Crusade destroyed the city, both Myca and their sire fled to the Balkans. Thanks to sanctuary that Myca had bargained for by Lugoj and Valia, the pair traveled through various fiefdoms of their hosts when Myca learned of the ambitions of the Ventru prince of Magdeburg, Jürgen von Wirgen. Seeking to establish a hold for himself in the territory of the Voivate, they came into conflict with Vladimir Rustovich, the voivode of voivodes. Planning to capitalize on the weakness of the Voivate, Myca approached the Ventru to use the conquered territory of Hungary to install a buffer between the fiefdoms of the Black Cross and the Voivate, in control of their Obertus Tzimisce. In order to avoid a costly war, both parties relented, forming the Obertus landholds nominally under the control of Myca's sire. Myca himself acted as a diplomat, often traveling extensively across the land to maintain diplomatic ties with the other fiends. During these travels, Myca deepened their connection to the road of sin under the instruction of their mentor, the Khaldun Laius Selphoramos. The two quickly became lovers and traveling companions, with Myca reveling in the freedom of the Obertus religion that his new road offered. Although the Obertus left Michael's legacy behind, his reach would greatly affect Myca, even after the Methuselah's final death. During Michael's years in Constantinople, Michael encouraged Myca's thirst for knowledge. It was his intent to make the young Tzimisce a walking record of Constantinople, Michael's vision of heaven on earth. During Michael's final nights, Symeon and Gregorius Demetrius reshaped Myca's body and mind in a joint effort to make them a copy of the Dracon. The doppelganger was presented to Michael, and they loved each other. Michael perceived the farce, of course, but he did not care. Instead, he loved Myca for who they were, and instilled Vykos with his vision and with the need to preserve the dream's legacy. Myca became Michael's architect, building a new kingdom without the mistakes of the past. The young Tzimisce had the memories of this event plucked away by their sire soon after it occurred, but they eventually remembered the episode moments before they had a bizarre encounter with another member of the Trinity who used to rule Constantinople, the true Dracon. Inside an Obertus monastery, on the outskirts of Brasov, Myca's lover, Illis Cel Formos, became the avatar of the Tzimisce antediluvian, and consumed the essence of his child, Dracon. He then proceeded Vykos, impregnating the young Tzimisce's flesh, blood, and his very soul with the essence of the dragon. After this event, Vykos changed drastically. They began to carry out the dreams of both Michael and the Dracon, crafting a living empire of flesh rather than stone. Their city was to be a community of Cainites founded on pillars of blood and bone. Following the infusion of the Dracon's essence, Myca fled back to Constantinople, staying in touch with the rest of the fiends via correspondence. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. So now not only was he lovers with Michael, he was turned into a complete doppelganger of the Dracon. He met up with the Dracon by the antediluvian of Clan Tzimisce, who ate his current lover and then assaulted Vykos, impregnating them. It's so much, and this isn't why I don't like the character, really. And in fact, I like the character, I just don't like the character, if that makes any sense to you. Have you ever had a character that you've watched and you're like, oh, this is not a likable person, this is not a person that I would want to have a conversation with, but you're like, it's necessary for the story, and I like the fact that it's there. That's kind of how I feel about Vykos. Their participation in the Sabbat's formation was the first step towards that goal. During the Anti-Tripu Uprising, better known as the Anarch Revolt, the Anarchs attacked their elders' strongholds to destroy everything associated with their former masters. Myca, on the other hand, played the monster while torturing Symeon, repeatedly absorbing and regurgitating their sire before the final act of diablerie, but also took the role of scholar when they saved books at risk of their own existence. During the uprising, Myca aided their allies, Lugoj and Valia, and proved pivotal aid to the nascent Sabbat movement as Priscus. In 1453, Myca was forced to flee Constantinople and turn to roaming the landscape of Transylvania as part of several pacts. 40 years later, Myca attended the Convention of Thorns, voicing their disagreement with Hardestet's plans by throwing their own genitals into the Ventrus's face. Though later, Vykos admitted that action, all those years ago, was vulgar and short-sighted. Myca was responsible for the orchestrating of the attack on the village of Thorns and renamed themselves Sascha Vykos after the event, becoming one of the most iconic members of the early Sabbat. Since that time, Vykos has served their sect as scholar and warrior. In both roles, they act as a wandering Priscus, though their manner of advising regional cardinals seems more akin to making strong suggestions than polite recommendations. As a scholar, they maintain ancient libraries and repositories across the Balkan states. In this role, Sasha is an ally to the Old Guard Sabbat, who appreciate the strength of knowledge. As a warrior, however, Sasha is also a frightening tool of retribution, with mastery over vicissitude and thaumaturgy. They can best most adversaries. Generally, though, they prefer to capture their foes rather than killing them. Many of Sasha's prisoners have endured sessions of alternating torture and ecstatic pleasure that lasts for decades. Sasha's victims are often unsure whether they are undergoing torture. In the early nights of the struggle, Sasha remained among the few Tzimisce who did not abandon their Carpathian keeps to the growing Camarilla. Unlike many of their Sabbat colleagues, Sasha appreciated and understood the necessity of employing mortals for Cainite gain. Many sect members, particularly the younger ones, scoffed at the use of Caine, but Sasha knew that the Camarilla grew strong in influence and territory because of their reliance on mortal society. Sasha chose to fight Hardestet and the Camarilla linchpins at their own game through mortal proxies. They sponsored the Oskos, Senge Conzers, and Habsburg-supported pirates in attacking the Venetian and Ottoman shipping lines. Most often these pirates plundered for greed, but Sasha occasionally employed them to attack Cainite-sponsored vessels in the hopes of kidnapping and questioning the ghouls of rivals. Eventually, however, Sasha's interests drift away from the jihad, only to re-emerge from the seclusion during the First Sabbat Civil War. So, we're starting to get into now Sasha's role in the Sabbat. The fact that they ripped off their own genitals and threw them into Hardestet's face is always going to be a highlight in the blooper reel of Cainite history. It is one of those most amazing things, especially if you consider one of my considerations. By this point in time, it is Cainite fact that Hardestet the Elder was already murdered by Tyler. So who was it that Vykos threw their genitals into the face of? Hardestet the Younger. Who was that? Personally, I think it was Jürgen von Virgen, the exact same venture that they fought against centuries before. That is my thought on the whole thing. During their time away from the political affairs of the Sabbat, Vykos' skills with the witchcraft of the heinous Tremere were stronger than ever. And allied Tzimisce suspected Sasha had grown in knowledge under their tutelage of Cupola during their stay in the Old Country. With the signing of the Purchase Pact, Sasha seemed driven in new directions, with a thirst of arcane knowledge and archaeology. Throughout the late 19th and early 20th century, they financially supported dozens of expositions in Egypt, Greece, and the Middle East. In 1882, Sasha even traveled to the Fire Court of Luxor under the name of Alexei, exchanging services with the local followers of Set, and acting as the local torture master in exchange for secrets. During their stay, Sasha earned the Setites' enmity by stealing away to obtain a piece of the Sargon fragment, in hopes of learning magical secrets that would have allowed them to surpass Gortrix. To this end, Sasha even dabbled in infernalism, and called upon a demon to aid them in studying the tablet undisturbed. Both the Setites of the Fire Court, as well as the ancient Cappadocian Constantia, were interested in stopping him, and sent a coterie of kindred headed by Anatole to prevent them from learning the greater secrets of the fragment. Sasha had to flee Egypt to continue their studies elsewhere. On the very rare occasion, they even joined the odd dig in the Holy Land, Lebanon, and Syria. This did not distract them from their duty, however, for during the Second Sabbat Civil War, Sasha served Regent Gorchist by eliminating the sect's most troublesome dissenters. For Sasha's role in the struggle, the signing of the revised Code of Milan also saw their appointment to the position of Priscus. As such, they now traveled the world on behalf of the Sabbat, dealing with trouble as they see fit. In this violent facet, Sasha appeals to the younger Sabbat. Collectively, in turn, the Sabbat is a weapon for Sasha, a living battlement against the rapacious antediluvians, the adversaries in Sasha's morality play. Every death they inflict strengthens the Sabbat's position. Every splatter of blood is a part of God's portrait. Every agonizing cry is a nail in heaven's unliving city. That is why they know how each nerve screams, how much blood flows from specific wounds, and how much fat they can rob from a mortal body before death. So as we move on, we realize that Sasha's big goal here is to just surpass Gortrix, who is one of the greatest wizards who's ever lived. Gortrix also has his own problems aside from that, as you know, and if you don't, you'll find out in a later bio probably. But Sasha has this unending need to just be the best, and they will do anything for it, including infernalism. This is one of the things that turns me off. I just see Sasha as having such a intent, like, code of morality, and the fact that they turn to infernalism at all kind of brings me down on that facet. When dealing with the Banu Hakim assassin Paramendes, who was contracted to kill the Tremere regent of Atlanta, Vykos saw through the thaumaturgical safeguards that the Tremere had woven to ensure her survival, and took the assassin as their personal plaything in recompense. She then led the whole offensive, known as the Siege of Atlanta. In Atlanta, Sasha, being inspired by the rumors of the thin-blooded, unsuccessfully tried to bear a baby out of curiosity. In the course of the following Sabbat offensive at the east coast of the United States, Sascha Vykos was the leader of the Sabbat raid against Washington, D.C., and was granted the diocese over the conquered city in recognition of their deeds. That is such an oversimplification of everything that happened, because we're actually talking about the fall of Atlanta, the attack on the East Coast. I believe like 2 or 3 archbishops died in the process, orchestrated, by the way, by Vykos. Vykos then takes the archbishopship of Washington, D.C., and literally just abandons it weeks or months later. Like, they are not built to be sitting in a city and controlling, mitigating, and it's just not something that Sasha was good at. It's not something that Sasha wanted to do. I think one of the biggest things that actually comes to my mind after Sasha became Archbishop of Washington, D.C. was when she was at the castle at the Smithsonian and was attacked by a creature who not only wielded vicissitude like a master, but also had obtenebration to a scary level. And it ended up being a child of Vykos. Vykos then gave it a very brutal instruction on what it truly meant to follow the path of metamorphosis, which really confuses me because Sascha Vykos practices path of death and soul. So that always just like, what are you on? What are you doing? Why are you such a metamorphosis but also following a different path of enlightenment? Like, there's so much back and forth with this character when it came to that. But we did get to see how Vykos chooses their forms by them educating young Anthony, which was the name of the child that Vykos forgot they made, on how to do it. They took several human beings and Anthony and basically removed their skeletons and balled them up and threw them in a corner and said, pull yourself out of it. The consciousnesses merged. He eventually created his own physical form, but he did not recognize that physical form in the mirror. Sascha Vykos showed him exactly how Vykos chooses what their body wants to do. It spent a good amount of time trying to rebuild itself, but when it did, it was a completely different person who understood metamorphosis on a whole new level. This is the one thing that I took out of Vykos that really struck with me and made me go, that is how you choose what you're going to be. You don't. You evolve into it. Metamorphosis is an amazing thing, and the fact that Vykos doesn't actually follow the path of metamorphosis blows my damn mind. In one of the Gehenna scenarios, Peter Zune and Vykos work together trying to save the world from the Antediluvians. In the Gehenna scenario that they're talking about, they're discussing how Peter Zune, once he realizes that Hardestat had been brainwashing him and wiping his minds, and he had literally been globe hopping trying to find information about the real truth about the antediluvians, delivering it to the Camarilla, and then not being allowed to know what was going on, Vykos and Peter Zune team up to create the Neftali, which means the highest point. And it's a subsect of the Camarilla, which is also kind of Sabbat, where they are militant against the antediluvians, but still are trying to uphold Camarilla values. I do believe that Theo Bell was part of this as well, but it's very cloudy and murky and left open to storyteller and player interpretation. In the V20 timeline, Sasha's preoccupation with archaeology and the occult is not an undirected thirst for such vagaries as knowledge and power. Sasha seeks to recapture Michael's full lessons and dreams, which fade further from their thoughts each passing year. When Constantinople fell, its Christian and later Muslim invaders scattered much of its wealth and wisdom throughout the Western Hemisphere and the Near East. Sasha surmises that the full scope of Michael's vision rests somewhere with Constantinople's stolen legacy. Recently, however, Sasha has come to believe that Michael's legacy lies hidden in the others, such as herself. Now Sasha seeks to recapture that knowledge by diablerizing the few remaining survivors of Constantinople. This includes the Gangrel Baron Thomas Farrow, the Nosferatu Malachite, and most importantly, the Dracon himself. Whether this proves Sasha's great coup or the beginning of their fall remains to be seen. In Beckett's Jihad Diary, the embryo of the Dracon grafted inextricably into their being by the eldest centuries ago was no longer within Vykos' body. Whether aborted or miscarried, they were free from the maniacally bitter and self-destructive metastasis of their ancestors' consciousness. The second realization was that the dream, whose banner they carried so long, was never more than a nightmare to them. A nightmare of violation, first by their sire, then by Michael, and finally by the Dracon. Unfortunately, we don't really have any information on what's going on with Vykos currently, as I make this video, for Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. Vykos is still out there, but has just disappeared. Vykos does not have any information whatsoever in the 5th edition, which really does kind of suck, because I want to know what exactly we're dealing with Sasha here. Are we dealing with the obsessed over the dream of Michael and the Trinity Vykos? Are we dealing with the I've turned back into Myca instead of Sasha because I'm terrified of vicissitude and I don't want to use it anymore, like we saw in the Neftali plotline for the Gehenna stuff? Where exactly does Sasha sit in 5th edition is just full of shadow. No one knows what's going on, and maybe, hopefully, we'll see something in the future. In their original chosen form, Myca has a saturnine aspect with pale skin, long black hair, large hazel eyes. Their face seems all plains and shadows, with their high cheekbones their most prominent feature. Tall and slim, they had very long fingers and pointed, painted fingernails. For years, they affected robes and cloaks of the finest Byzantine quality. Their voice was cultured, their manner pleasant. Such was the beauty, enhanced by vicissitude, that both sexes lusted after him. After the Convention of Thorns, Sasha gradually assumed an alien androgynous aspect, refining their wicked vicissitude and shaping themselves into a beautiful angel of death. Sasha is an alien beauty. Their limbs are long, slender, and graceful, but they move with power. Their face is like a work of Michelangelo, perfect and flawless in form. Not even the master could sculpt Sasha's cruel contestants, however. The network of scars, tattoos, and piercings that cover their androgynous form only add to Sasha's enigmatic beauty. What appears to be thin, black tattoos on their body are skin clefts that open like a babe's toothless mouth. Sasha's skill with vicissitudes allows them to speak through the mouths as well, creating a chorus of their voice to unnerve even the most strong-willed opponent. Sasha displays these marks like trophies, sometimes stroking them with tenderness. Sasha's most compelling feature, however, is their eyes. They watch everything around them, the way a coroner dissects a cadaver. They never blink or look away. They simply stare. Sasha is most definitely a terrifying specimen of kindred existence. There's no lie on that one. And the fact that they have found a way to cover themselves in tiny mouths, it does sound unnerving, but it also sounds insanely practical when you think about being a thaumaturge. What if somebody is able to gag you? Now you can talk through your very skin itself. Nothing stops this vampire from using its chosen power of thaumaturgy. In V1 edition, Myca had a dusky African skin tone. This was retconned with the appearance of their Hungarian origins in Dark Ages. Myca chose the name Sasha at the Convention of Thorns in re-embracing of an old comrade in arms that died in battle against the Camarilla. So aside from all the different stories that we hear that other people have just made up to make the fact that Sasha is that much more terrifying, that's really all the official knowledge we have on Vykos. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. Vykos is probably the longest of these videos that I'm going to put out there, just because the story is so long, the story is so in-depth, and there's so much detail to go on over this Tzimisce. Again, not my favorite Tzimisce, but a Tzimisce nonetheless. And I do give deep respect to the dear Priscus, Sasha, for everything that they have given to us. Thank you very much for joining us. I am Voivode Maquette. This is Our World of Darkness, and this has been Sascha Vykos. Good evening.